All right, so we just manually figured out the number of Americans under age 65 uninsured in 1995. Yay! Yay for algebra. Okay, so yeah, exactly. Yay for algebra. Let's figure out how to do it technologically, because that gets monotonous. I know you guys can do that manually, that's why you're here. You survived 60, 65, and 95. So there are a couple ways you can do this. Chelsea found a slick way to do it. I am going to preface both of these by telling you the following. I would turn your plot off right now. That scatter plot that is through your line, turn it off. Don't delete it, but turn it off. And the easiest way to do that, honestly, is press the Y equals button. Press the Y equals button. Put your blinker on top of the highlighted plot 1 and press enter. That's a toggle, toggles it on and off. Now if you press graph, you'll only see your line and not the plot. And the reason I say to turn it off is it's only going to kind of get in your way with everything we're going to do from now on. The scatter plot essentially is designed for you to look at the data and decide, does it look like a curve, like a line, does a parabola, does it make it like a wave, is it making a wave that's tightening up? There's all kinds of things data can do. Once you've decided it's linear, you really don't need it anymore. So you can turn it off and just use the model that you come with. Fair enough? Fantastic. Tom, go ahead.
How do you turn that off?
Put your blinker on top of it. Yep, and then press enter. Yep, and that's a toggle. On, off, on, off. Now if you press graph, you'll get your line and nothing else. So if we're here, now the thing that sucks about this, and I apologize, the thing that sucks about this is you've lost all manner of scaling. The scaling's gone, you have no idea what things mean anymore. I mean, if you're familiar with the window menu of 95, you realize that your tick marks are set at 1. So every time you see a tick, every time you see a tick mark, that's like 1.2, 2.2, 3.2, and so forth. So the best thing to do is to be able to get the coordinates on the graph. And that's what, you can solve the problem right here, predict the number of uninsured Americans. You can solve that problem while simultaneously getting coordinates on the graph by pressing the second trace button, second function button, and then the trace menu. Okay, second trace. You see this value command that's up here at the top? If you grab that, if you grab the value command, okay, and then you type in an X value, it will kick out a Y value for you. So if you type in 5 and press enter, it'll tell you on the line when X equals 5, Y equals 38.35. That's kind of nice. That's kind of nice because it does what you just did manually, but it does it automatically.
And what are we getting? I'm sorry.
Second trace. Second trace and then value. Yes, ma'am. And then you give it an X value, it kicks out a Y value. Please.
This information's not in this little booklet you gave us.
No, this is going a little bit past the booklet. Do I have this anywhere else? I might have this in my old 95 notes, maybe. But you know, it's nice. Ha! We're recording it.
Oh,
I just remembered that we're recording the damn video. So it's right there. I just waved to myself, so like 4 hours later you can watch me wave to you again, and it's kind of like a Back to the Future moment. Marty! So, cool? Alright. Fair enough? Now, the only downside of that, the only downside of the value, well, we'll come back to it. We'll come back to a possible downside. We'll deal with that problem when we have to deal with it. Good so far? Okay, so there's an algebra plus a non-algebra way of getting the same thing answered. Here we go. Find X. Next question down here. Find X so that Y equals 40. Now that is a pure algebra question. That is not contextual. I'm going to make it contextual here momentarily. So find X so Y equals 40. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide the camera off to the side of the board. We're going to do it by hand first. Then we'll go back and figure out how to solve it with the TI, of course, because I like using both. Good. All right. So we got the same model from before, which is defined over there. Y equals 1.05x plus 33.1. So I'm telling you, I'm giving you a Y value now, and you have to find an X value. Now there's two ways you can do this. One way is to solve this for X right now, and then plug in the Y, like you did in your project. That's one way to do it. One way is to plug in the Y right now and then solve for X. So what do you guys want to do? Plug in the Y right now? Plug in the Y. Okay, good. Y equals 40. There it is. 40. So we got to solve this bad boy for X. Ish, yeah? Is this in the way? We okay with this thing right here? Oh, yeah. Let's solve away. Yes? 33.1 over 6.9, I think. Check my math on this, friends.
It is.
Thank you. 6.9 divided by 1.05 is x. I'm going to call x approximately, was that 7?
6.57, yeah.
6.57, we'll call it. We'll give you a little bit more accuracy. 6.57. Boom. Solved. Solved. Fair enough? Ish?
Or can you just keep?
Yes!
Can you cheat and just?
Yeah, it's not cheating. It's a different tool, Shelby. Be careful with the language in here. Cheating. Is your cell phone cheating because you don't walk across town and talk to somebody? No. So Shelby asked a very good question. Okay, this is fine. This is fine and dandy, and we've survived algebra class for half of our natural lives and done just this. The question is there a technological way? Of course there is. Of course there is. Now the kicker is, there are efficient and inefficient ways of doing it, and that's what I want to make sure we all see here. All right. So that was the algebraic way. Everybody okay with the algebra way? Yeah. Okay, good. Now there's a couple ways to get at this, and it's not cheating. There's a couple ways to get the estimation of where that x value is. One way is once you have your line on the screen like this.
How'd you clear it out?
I just pressed the graph button again, and it just erased everything off of it, right? You can press the trace button by itself. If you just press trace, I'm going to slide the camera back so we see everything better. Yeah, that's better. If you just press the trace button, the spider is now stuck on the line, and you can do what I call scooching. You can scooch left and scooch right, which means slide that slider left and right, and as it does that, it changes the x and y coordinates. So essentially, you can then scooch until you get the y value to be as close to 40 as possible. So let's see. 40.04, 39.93, I think that's the closest, yeah? 40.04 is a little bit over, but it's less over than that one is under. Please, Amber?
What are you pressing, the left or right button?
Left or right. Whenever I say scooch, is left or right. Shelby, yes?
How do you get rid of? Because I have my points on my line still. So
Press your y equals button,
Okay.
and you see how your plot 1 is highlighted?
Yes, sir.
Blinker on top of it, and press the enter button, and then when you press graph, it's gone.
Okay.
Gone now?
Got it. Yes, sir.
And the reason, Shelby, thank you for bringing that back up. The reason I had you turn the scatter plot off, if you have it on like it is right now, and you press the trace button, it automatically goes to the plot first, and you have to jump off the plot to get on the line. It's just annoying. It's just that's why it's nice to have the plot off, just to get it out of the way.
Okay.
Fair enough?
Yes, sir.
Good. Oh, sir, so cute. Gray hair. Cool so far? That is not cheating. That is a totally fine way of finding the x and y coordinates. It can be a little tedious and time-consuming, though. Is there a more direct way we can get to it? Would you remember? I guess what I'm getting. Do you remember from 95?
The intercept.
That's exactly it, Aaron. It depends on who you had for 95. So there's a couple ways you can do it. You could solve the equation and set it equal to 0, but I think most students like to do it this way. Here's the equation you have to solve right here. Everything. Here's the equation you had to solve. This is all the algebra you have to do. But you don't have to do that. What you can do is you can insert this into y2. This is already in y1. And then figure out where those equal each other. And this is related to the prerequisite quiz you guys just did for last week. That prereq quiz, you were doing this graphically on the picture that I gave you. I gave you a grid with a couple equations that were intersecting, and you were using that to solve equations. You weren't actually, hopefully you weren't actually solving the equations, you were using the graph to do it for you. So the idea here is, you go back to your y equals menu, and you have a y of 40. So you're going to put that in y2. Now press graph. And what you'll see is, you'll see your original line, and you'll also see y equals 40 coming in like this. And at some point, that hits your model line. And when it hits your model line, that means that at that point, both the y values are the same, which means on this line, y equals 40. But you also will now know where x equals on the line. if you use what's called the intersect command. And hopefully you did a lot of this in Math 95, I'm hoping. If not, we'll do a lot of it here, so it's all good. Ready? Second trace. Remember the place we got that value command from before? It's exactly the same place that lives. Second trace. Go find the intersect command, which is down there, number 5. And then it asks a couple questions. It says first curve. A curve in mathematics is any graph that the TI is graphing. So when it asks for a curve, it means what should I use? Should I use y1, 1.05x plus 33.1 as your first equation? And yes, you want to, so just press enter. That says yes. Should you use y2, 40 as your second curve? Yes. It asks you for a guess. To my knowledge, this is unimportant. You just press enter again. To my knowledge, you don't need to have a guess. Your answers are precise enough without the guess. Look at that! Boom! X equals 6.57, which is exactly what you guys told me. My estimate was 7 was off, it's closer to 6.57. So there's a way of getting. Now this requires a lot more button pushes, and it requires some familiarity with what you did in 95, which might be agonizingly awful enough for you to want to do it. But I do believe this is going to be easier in the long run, because many people do algebra. It tends to be like pulling teeth without Novocaine for a lot of people. So I'm trying to give you alternate solutions to that. Here's an alternate solution using technology. Fair enough? Good, 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 good. So either algebraically or technologically, x is 6.57. Fantastic. What am I going to ask you next? Yes! That's exactly what I... Who said it? That was very wise. Yes, Aaron. What the hell does it mean? You're out there digging in the dirt with your neighbor planting your spring bulbs. Which, FYI, are now coming up because it's like 86 degrees outside. 6.57! Your neighbor freaks out and goes, wait a minute, what the hell does that even mean? What does that mean? What does that mean, 6.57? Good! So sometime during 96-ish,
40 million people that are underserved.
Sometime in 1996, you can put 1996 and a half, that's totally fine. 0.57 of the way through 1996, that's totally fine too. Sometime in 96 would be perfectly fine. Sometime in 96, there were 40 million uninsured people. At some point before that, there were fewer. At some point after that, there are now more. But that was that turning point. Remember, do you remember a few years back, they celebrated the 7 billionth person being born on Earth? Do you remember this? I think it was like sometime last year or end of 2012. It was like, yay! The 7 billionth person was born on Earth. Now, how the hell do they know that?
Yeah. Right, they're smart, they're all knowledge.
What they did, they estimated based on the largest countries on Earth and their birth rates. I believe the children was either Indian or Chinese. Why? Because of the 2 most populous country. If they were to put the 3rd most populous country, what would it be? Facebook. Facebook is the 3rd largest country in the world, behind India and China. 500 million plus users or something like that, which is the 3rd largest country besides India and China. Anyway, Zuckerberg as his kid, 7 billionth person. But that's the idea, it's estimates. That's why when you say, I think it's adorable to say 1996.57. I love that, I love that, but these are all estimates. So basically you're saying plus or minus something, sometime in 96 we flipped over to 40 million uninsured and it hasn't gone back down. At least in the data set that we have in front of us. Fair enough? That's why I wanted to know, because otherwise it's just a number 6.57. There's uncertainty in that number as well. I want to get back into that as we do our experiment later on. Please, yes?
It's back a little bit on this.
Go ahead.
I got lost. So you put the 40
In
like,
Y2 or...
like this?
No, not the 1.05x plus 40. Just 40 by itself. Just 40 by itself, yeah. Oh, time out now, time out. If anybody needs a resource for that intersect thing I just did, I do have a booklet for that. Email me, I'll send it out to you. Just email me, I'll send it out to you, okay? Just remind me, I'll forget that we had this discussion in 30 seconds. But I know I have that resource for 95 days. Fair enough? Good.
Then you push graph.
Yes. Yeah, then it matches. And I'll send you that resource too if you want, Kelly. I can send that booklet to you. It's the same shape as this one here. But it teaches you how to do this. That's the one. Cool? Legit. Okay, good. Now finally, let's become pure statistics students. Now. And when I say now, you can imagine that means 2013. 2014 just started, so it's going to be too hard to get numbers. Not to mention Obamacare just kicked in. That's going to change things too, which is actually exciting to see how that changes. But predict the number of uninsured Americans under age 65 right now. And let's use 2013 as now, shall we? Let's use 2013 as now. How about it?
What was that graph called? The one that I'm emailing you about, the one that you said.
Just say, send me the booklet for Intersect. Yeah, and if any one person emails me, I can send the entire class the booklet, which will be very, very handy. Especially if you tell me to do that, Frankie.